Hey, ladies and gentlemen, the Truth Detector is back. We're going to be talking about politics today, politics of the past and politics of the present day, because the question is, how did the Democratic Party of the South, which was the party of slave ownership, become the party preferred by blacks in America today? It's a question that needs to be explored and answered. We're going to get to it. You're listening to the Hear Me Out broadcast. Hit the like and subscribe button if you like the content. Let's get busy.
If you only knew what I have in store for you, baby.
We're going to be talking about the politics today. How did the Democratic Party of the South become the party preferred by black people in America today? Back in 1861, when the Civil War started, the Democratic Party was the party of the South for slaves. They wanted to retain their rights to own slaves and their individual state rights in so doing that. They were the party of slave ownership, and they were willing to go against the North or the Union, the federal government, and fight for their right to own slaves. They were going to succeed from the Union and become their own country. They had their own president, Jefferson Davis. He was a fake president. He was not duly noted as president, but they ascended him to the office of the president in their quest to become a nation apart from the Union, to own slaves. Now, how did the Democratic Party of today, which was the party of slave ownership in the South, become the party that is preferred by black people today? How did that happen? There is a history and a morphology that pertains to this of how black people who were more or less Republicans under Lincoln and were for Lincoln and the Republican Party, and now they are Democrats, and the Democrat Party is the party that is seen that is progressing black people to high positions in political positions. How did that all come about? Well, we're going to explore that. The Democratic Party in 1861 had their fake president, Jefferson Davis. He was not duly elected as part of our electoral system in becoming president. Abraham Lincoln was the president, duly elected president of the United States of America at that time. The North, which Lincoln resided over, was totally against slavery. They were totally against it, and they did not believe that the South had the right to own slaves and succeed from the Union and become a separate nation. So the war was on. It started in 1861, it ended in 1865, and up until 1928, black people were more or less Republicans. They believed in the Republican parties because of what Abraham Lincoln did to free the slaves. But it was not all wine and roses for black people, even in 1928 in the United States of America. So how did black people end up coming over to the Democratic Party, which was the former party of slave ownership? Well, it all started to come about in 1927 when the Great Flood of the Mississippi took place, and it flooded the Mississippi Valley and all the lower states that were close to the Mississippi River, and black people suffered greatly. Now, white people did too. In fact, the Mississippi River was swollen to at one point, it was 30 miles, and some say even 62 miles across. That's how flooded the Mississippi became during those torrential rainfalls during that period in 1927. Well, Calvin Coolidge was president. He was a Republican, and his Commerce Secretary was Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover made a deal with the poor blacks and the poor whites that lived along the Mississippi River. He made a deal to blow up the levees to destroy the poor blacks and poor whites' homes so that they could save the fluent neighborhoods of the southern cities that were along the Mississippi, such as New Orleans and other cities, so they wouldn't be destroyed. He made a deal. I'll blow up the levees. Your homes will be destroyed. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to reimburse you after we do this to save these cities so that you can rebuild. Well, the following year, Herbert Hoover ran for president and became president. And what did he do? He reneged on his deal to reimburse the poor blacks and poor whites that homes were destroyed by blowing up the levees to divert the waters from destroying these influential southern cities like New Orleans. And so black people got angry. They were already being treated terribly by the Hoover administration and the Calvin Coolidge administration. They had to get notes or letters from their sharecroppers, because most of the black people after slavery remained sharecroppers with their white slave masters, even though we were free to have a way to make a living. So they were sharecroppers, and they had to get letters from the sharecroppers to even receive all the benefits that the Coolidge administration or the Hoover administration was giving to the people who were flooded out. They were not treated well at all. And this really angered blacks in the South. Now, after making the deal with Herbert Hoover to blow up their levees, to destroy their homes, what lone homes were left from the flood, and then Herbert Hoover reneged on the deal to repay these people, to reimburse them, to rebuild their homes, it angered black people so badly that they began to exit the Republican Party. They no longer trusted in the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, the party that freed the slaves. They had lost faith in the Republican Party because of what they did, because of what Herbert Hoover did and Calvin Coolidge did. They were treated terribly during those flood stages. They were treated so badly. And 500 people at that time, over 500 people had lost their lives due to the flood. Now, if you look back in history, some people say, well, Herbert Hoover did and Calvin Coolidge did a great job as far as the flood was concerned, but not for black people. Black people did not feel that Coolidge or Herbert Hoover did a good job in helping them out concerning the floods. And so black people began to leave the sharecropping altogether, and they were moving north to the industrialized cities of the north to get factory jobs, because it was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And so they left the South and started moving north. And they also turned their backs on the Republican Party, because the Republican Party did very little to help them during this flood stage. And it was a sentiment that rushed across the country, and the black people began to exit. It was an exodus, just like the children of Israel exited Egypt, so did the black people make an exodus out of the Republican Party. They became more enamored with the Democratic Party. Now, here's the thing that was happening at that point that most people don't realize, is that the Democrats of the South, who were for the Ku Klux Klan and were for white supremacy, they were very happy with what Calvin Coolidge and Herbert Hoover had did as president, were doing as presidents concerning black people. And so they began to move over to the Republican Party. People don't understand this, but the Democrats of the South who were for slaves began to move over to the Republican Party in 1928 because they were happy about what Calvin Coolidge and Herbert Hoover did toward black people. They moved to the Republican Party, and the Republicans that were the true, what we would call Lincolnites or Lincolnians, they moved to the Democratic Party. So it was a very torrential shift that moved these group of people from one party to another. So now black people no longer had any faith in the Republican Party because of how they were treated by Coolidge and Herbert Hoover. So it was part of one of the biggest exodus of a political party in history by black people. And they left the party in droves at that time. Now it continued on into the 40s and 50s. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a president that a lot of black people liked. He instituted the 40-hour work week. He instituted Social Security. And at that time, children were forced to work as kids in long hours in factories and so forth in the North, and Hoover ended that. There was labor laws put in place to stop these wealthy business owners from using children working in factories that should have been in school getting an education. So the labor laws were passed, and no longer could these rich people, these rich white business owners use children for cheap labor to make their money anymore. So that was a thing that happened under Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We also got Social Security. Now, if you go back to the 60s, we had JFK, who became a Democrat. His brother, Robert, was a Democrat, and they were fighting for equal rights for black people. After the assassination of JFK, Lyndon Baines Johnson became president, and he signed the Civil Rights Bill. He signed the Bill of Rights for black people to vote. It was a Democratic president that did that. It was not a Republican. It was a Democratic president that did that gave black people the legal right to vote. So the civil rights movement was enhanced and brought about through the Democratic Party. It was not done by the former party of Lincoln. And I say the former party of Lincoln because it was no longer the party of Lincoln after 1928. That ended. 62 years after the Civil War had ended, the party of Lincoln ceased to be the party of Lincoln. Now they were for big money, businesses, and they were for power. They were no longer for the rights of all individuals. The Republican Party of today is not even for the rights of poor white people. They are for the rights of rich white people. That's how this all came about. And I like to talk about receipts. And here's what you have in receipts concerning the Democratic Party. The very first black Supreme Court justice was Thurgood Marshall. He was a Democrat. The first black attorney general, American attorney general of the whole United States was Eric Holder. He was black. The first black president was Barack Obama. He was a Democrat. The first black female Supreme Court justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. I think I'm saying her name right. I might have the last two names backwards. She was a Democrat. She is a Democrat. So you have receipts. You have Kamala Harris, and I'll talk about Kamala Harris later on in this video. The first female VP was a black woman, Kamala Harris. Now, these are receipts that the Republican Party cannot give you any. Now, for years, I was a Republican, and I thought the first black president would be Colin Powell. I just believed that he had the goods. He was the dude. I loved me some Colin Powell now. I trusted Colin Powell more than I trusted any televangelist. They're all crooks. They're all crooks, okay? But I trusted Colin Powell. And Colin Powell, I believe, should have been the first black president, but the Republicans wasn't going to have it. So what they did, they knocked Colin Powell down. They dropped their panties and they dropped their shorts, and they bent down and they took a shit on Colin Powell. They shitted on him. And then they looked at him and said, "You are a nigger. Carry our water, nigger." I know I'm pissing some people off with this language, but it is what it is. They shitted on Colin Powell. They made sure that he wasn't going to be a black president. They made sure of it. They weren't going to have it. Now, here's what I got to say about all the black internet creators out there, like Jason Whitlock, that are Republican, and all the others out there. I will say to you, there will never be a black Republican president. Never. It won't happen. There will never be a black Republican president. It will not happen in this current iteration of the Republican Party. Because here you got a party that accepts the white supremacists, they accept Ku Klux Klan, they accept all the ills of society into that party as one big happy family. Now, you can't find no white supremacists and no Ku Klux Klan and no Nazis, no neo-Nazis trying to join the Democratic Party. Now, is the Democratic Party perfect? No. By all means, I tell you, they're not perfect. They got their flaws too. They got some serious issues too. But you're not going to find no neo-Nazis and no Ku Klux Klan joining the Democratic Party. They were a part of the Democratic Party in the 1920s and the 30s. And even the early 40s. But not anymore. They all moved to the Republican Party. You can find neo-Nazis, Ku Klux Klan, white supremacists in the Republican Party. But you won't find those people in the Democratic Party. Now, those are receipts that I know that exist. And I'll tell you right now, there are things about the Democratic Party that I do not agree with. But when it comes to giving receipts and promoting black people, they have the receipts. When Joe Biden was picking his vice president in 2020, his running mate, he wanted to pick a woman. And there were a lot of women that were up for the job. And Amy Klobuchar, Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota, she's a white woman, loved the woman. She dropped out of the race and she took her name out of the hat because she said it was time for a black woman to be VP. Where are you going to find a white woman in the Republican Party or a white man in the Republican Party that says, I'm dropping out of this, I think we should pick a black person? It ain't gonna happen, Jack. It ain't gonna happen. You know why? Because those people in the Republican Party believe that it's white man rule only. A white man has to rule. They don't even want a white woman to rule. They don't want a white woman to be the nominee of the party. Whereas the Democrats, we had Hillary Clinton. She was a legitimate nominee for president in the Democratic Party. She won those primaries all by herself. I'll say this to all the conservative, black, conservative, Republican content creators out there on YouTube. The day that the Republican Party nominates a black man to be perhaps president is the day that Satan and Jesus Christ appears in your bedroom, and Satan gets on his knees and accepts Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. That will be the day that the Republicans have a black president. It will never happen in the current iteration of this Republican Party because it is based on white man rule. And this is a party that will allow Nazis, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and the Ku Klux Klan, and you're all one big happy family. Just one big happy freaking family. And how in the world can a black man or black woman ignore those things and then get up in a rally with all the Trumpers and think that they're equal? You're not equal with them. You are niggers. I'll say it again. You are not equal with white Trumpers. You are niggers. Do you hear me, Tim Scott? Do you hear me, Byron Donalds? You licked Trump's boots and you didn't get even a cabinet position in his administration. You licked his boots. You licked his butt crack. And you didn't get a position you didn't get a cabinet position. What does that tell you? There will never be a black Republican president. Now, the Democratic Party is not perfect. They have their issues too. And one of the big issues that they did is what they did to Joe Biden this time around. They created a pressure campaign and forced that man out of his re-election campaign. They did it because they didn't want him in there anymore. And they stuck Kamala Harris in his place, and she lost. And the day that they forced Joe Biden out is the day that they lost this election. If Joe Biden had ran again, he would have won again. And people say, well, he was stuttering during that first debate. So what? Barack Obama lost his first debate to Mitt Romney, and he blew him away the second two debates and won re-election. Thank you. That's history. That's a fact, Jack. That's not hearsay. That's what happened. And what the Democratic Party did under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries, they created a pressure campaign to force Joe Biden out of his re-election campaign because of the Hollywood elites like George Clooney and his crowd didn't want to support Joe Biden. And so what Nancy and Hakeem Jeffries did, they met with Kamala Harris in secret. This is what I believe happened. I may not have the receipts to proof of it. This is what I believe. They met in secret with Kamala Harris behind Joe Biden's back to force him out, to stick her in the race because they thought they had a better chance. But what they did not realize was nobody trusted Kamala Harris. I'm a Democrat and I didn't trust her. A lot of people that did vote for her voted for her just out of party loyalty. They didn't want her. They didn't trust her. You hear me? They didn't trust her. I didn't trust her. And the reason that I didn't trust her is because I knew how she got her start in politics. Her start in politics started with an affair with the mayor, Willie Brown. He was the big-wig Democratic politician in California at the time.
I will not be shamed out of discussing this by people who say it's slut shaming or it's not relevant. It is relevant when a young candidate tries to sleep her way into politics and into power. And that is what it appears Kamala Harris did when she was a young political aspirant in San Francisco, when she had an affair with a man 30 years older than she was. She was 29 to 30 and he was 60 Willie Brown, who was like the godfather of San Francisco politics. So, this was technically an extramarital relationship. And they were mad that he gave one of his choice grifting positions, not to somebody who'd done a lot for Democratic politicians, but to Kamala Harris. And not just that, there was another one. He gave her a second position as well, which was basically the same kind of deal, where he just gave her an appointment. She reeked in tons of money, and boom, Bob's your uncle. She was off to the races in Dem politics. And then Willie Brown is on record as saying, I also then helped her with her next big position, which was becoming San Francisco DA. And very well known. And sure enough, that relationship paid dividends for her in more ways than one.
And when you needed something done, you went to Willie Brown, and Willie Brown got it done. He had all the clout, he had all the power, and he was married at the time, and she had an affair with him to get her foot in the door. And when Megyn Kelly and a lot of Republicans were saying that on the internet, I could not refute it because I knew it was the truth. It was the truth. But the Democratic media on the left, MSNBC, they ignored it all. They act like it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It was the truth. And you had people like on MSNBC talking about, oh, she's qualified. How? She's qualified to spread her legs and get dick to get her way to the top. And Megyn Kelly said, this is not slut shaming. And she was right. This woman screwed her way to the top. Now, Trump is just as bad, okay? He had an affair with a porn star and a Playboy bunny. He had an affair with the porn star, Stormy Daniels, whose real name is Stephanie Clifford, a.k.a. Stephanie Clifford. And he had an affair with the Playboy bunny, Karen McDougal. Those things happen. But for some reason, Republicans didn't give a crap. Donald Trump could have had an affair with 1,000 porn stars and 1,000 Playboy bunnies, and they still would have voted for him because it doesn't matter to them. Those people say they have morals, and they really don't have any morals at all. They are liars, but so are the Democrats. The Democrats are liars. They don't have any morals either. But the one thing the Democrats have over the Republicans is they're not racist. They're not pushing a racist agenda. And the Republican Party is white man rule only. Not even a white woman can rule in the Republican Party. There won't be a white Republican female president that would be nominated to the presidency in the Republican Party. It won't happen, Jack. And that damn show won't be no black person, woman or man, who will be nominated for president in the Republican Party. Because they done made up their mind. We are not having no nigger rule over us. That's the way they think about it. That's who they are. Look, I'm a Christian, and I tell it like it is. I worked with conservative Republicans my whole life. And without fail, every single one of them made a racist statement to me. They let me know I'm white, I'm better, you're black, and you're beneath me. That's how those people think. That's why Megyn Kelly had no problem saying Jesus was a white man. But not according to Billy Graham. Not according to Billy Graham. Billy Graham said Jesus was not a white man like him. His skin was dark. He wasn't as black as some of the other people out here, but he wasn't white.
And don't you black people ever forget one thing. The man that helped Jesus carry that cross was a black man. And don't ever forget another thing. Jesus belongs to Africa as much as he does to Europe and Asia. He was born in that part of the world that touches Africa and Asia and Europe, and Jesus was not a white man like me, nor was he as black as some of you. We don't know what the color of his skin, but it must have been a dark color like the people of his day, because he was a man like them. Don't ever say it's a white man's religion or a black man's religion. It's a world religion. He belongs to the world.
I'm going to let Billy Graham take it on out. Billy Graham said it best. Hey, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it didn't make too many people mad. But if so, so what? Hey, God bless. Keep the peace. Tell the truth. The truth is the only thing that matters. Peace out.